Good morning. My name is Ashutosh Sharma. I am a research director at Forrester Research. Today, I am going to be taking you through how cloud is enabling application modernization in India. This is part of a technology adoption profile, a study that we did on behalf of Google. There are three parts to this study, three parts to this webinar today. First one is we are going to share how application modernization in the context of digital transformation is becoming very important. We are going to share some of the research findings that we did. And the third, we are going to talk to you how important it is to make a business case for application modernization in case you are undertaking that activity. And finally, we are going to share some conclusions. But before we begin, there is a lot of change that happening in the industry over the years. Back in the day, firms used to look at manufacturing and distribution as the key differentiating capabilities, and it drove differentiation for almost 60 or 90 odd years, right from the 1900s to early 1990s. But then as 1990s started, we started living in the era of information technology revolution, and there firms which use their computers, use their IT capabilities better were winning. But then sometime in 2010, with the advent of smartphone, we entered the age of customer, and the power shifted first time to the from the brands in the hands of the customers. But now we are seeing something changing again. We are in a kind of a new age, and you can call it as the age of automation or age of prediction. But here firms are leveraging the increasing amount of data that they have. They are generating analytics and insights from the data and using it to drive algorithms which are changing the way they interact with their customers, and not just customers, some of the other stakeholders as well. So we see there is a kind of symbiotic technology and human interaction sort of relationship which is driving each other towards an accelerating change. So what happened back in the day when you had just one single interface, which was either your desktop or laptop, and mostly employees were using it. But as some of these form factors started evolving and we had smartphones coming in and you started interacting with some of these constituents over these devices, then we kind of entered the age of wearables, and now coming up these smart speakers. So there's a thread that we see where people are continuously upgrading themselves with new tech, and these upgraded people create new tech innovation demand, and firms are trying to catch up with this demand and trying to kind of deal with all these different types of interaction needs that are coming in. And that has led us to a fairly complex landscape where we see if in early 90s or at the start of the age of information, you were primarily serving your employees through one channel and you had kind of just one way of host an application, that landscape has changed completely. It's much more complex. You have many constituents to speak to, you have employees, you have contractors, you have partners, you have customers on one hand. On the other hand, you have multiple ways you interact with them. You have computers, you have laptops, desktops, you have devices which they carry with them at times. Then you have different types of IoT devices and other channels that are coming up for interaction. And then we see most of the ways that these devices are getting connected back into enterprise are also changing. There are multiple ways you could run your application. You could have it on-prem or you could have it on cloud, and the multiple variations in between. So this landscape has changed a lot, and this complexity is requiring firms to engage with these constituents at a speed which was not seen before. And you need to be able to respond to these changes faster and at the same time simplify your processes so you can serve your constituents better. And there comes in the cloud. We are seeing cloud adoption as a key IoT priority that's come up in last few years. In fact, in India, 73% of the organizations say they're going to be adopting cloud, or it's going to become very important IT priority over the next 12 months. And part of the reason that they're adopting cloud is not just cost. In fact, most of the firms have moved beyond cost, and it's not even just technology transformation, because technology transformation is closely linked to the digital transformation of the business, and it's become a very key enabler to your business's success. And as a result, cloud and some of the emerging technologies that come with it are becoming a key business transformation accelerator for your firm. We are seeing firms are looking at some of the characteristics that cloud provides, like scalability, lower cost in some cases, ease of operations, resilience, ability to connect to multiple partners with a relative ease, ability to scale up and down. These are some of the key characteristics which are attracting firms towards cloud. But as you go towards adopting cloud, you have to remember what kind of scope you have in mind. Some firms go with an approach of moving the entire data center to the cloud, and it's like, why not? Why can't I do this? That's kind of their key philosophy. Why can't I put this application or that application? They basically go with that mentality of moving lock, stock and barrel to the cloud. Other firms adopt a more nuanced approach where they look at each application and see which one fits best. There are pros and cons for both of them. Especially in the second approach, however, the sunk costs do not disappear, but there are certain advantages where you can move your application at the right pace. You can figure out what's the most appropriate technology and location for hosting an application. So there are pros and cons with that. Now in India as well, firms are actively using cloud platform for migrating workloads and modernizing applications. We saw some data which we're going to share with you. 69% of the firms expect to migrate more core traditional business applications to the cloud. So mind you, we are not talking about some of the peripheral customer facing applications which anyway were on the cloud or being built on cloud. We are talking about core applications. So that's a pretty significant number. Almost 2 in 3 firms are looking at migrating core applications to the cloud. We are seeing that even secure and compliance sensitive workloads are being considered to be put on cloud in next 2 years, 73% number. Keep this in mind because I'm going to revisit how important security and compliance is to the firms as I go further in this webinar. 41% of the firms expect to build new application in the cloud. This number seems relatively smaller than the previous 2 numbers. Part of the reason is that most of the new applications are kind of most likely already being built in cloud or sourced from cloud, either through a SaaS solution or some such thing. But still it's a pretty significant number. So we are seeing firms are looking at cloud in an increasing manner to adopt or to drive their business applications. When it comes to some of the emerging technologies that cloud brings, and in this particular case this question was around microservices, when we asked about some of the cloud native technologies, there is a large number of firms which are looking at adopting these capabilities because it allows them to achieve application and architecture agility. So in our interactions with CIOs, we find that microservices and serverless and some of those technologies are becoming very important for them. In fact, in India, 46% firms expect to move towards this sort of architecture and open source in the next 2 years. So that kind of brings me to the next section as to what was this survey about. We did this survey not just for application modernization, but through a wider set of questions. I'm going to quickly give you an overview of what the demographics of the survey was and how some of the questions that we asked fared. So this was a pretty broad survey. Almost 360 business and technology decision makers were surveyed as part of this. It was spread across 6 different industries. Right at the top left corner of the slide, you'll see them, and across multiple multiple sizes of the company in terms of employee size as well as revenue. Most of the executives were senior executives, director level and above. The level of decision making was also pretty senior. So we kind of truly went to the influencers and the decision makers in the organizations. Quite a few of them were from business and almost half of them, or just under half of them from IT as well. And then this spread across multiple job functions. What did we find? So this is the second or third in the series of the webinars that we've conducted, and what we're going to talk about is how, in this particular one, how modernizing applications through public cloud has become a key goal for some of the enterprises, and most of the enterprises that we surveyed alluded to that. But before we go further, what exactly do organizations use public cloud for? There are essentially 4 things. One, they want to transform their customer experience. They want to improve their digital operation excellence so that they become much faster, much scalable, much agile. Then they want to drive the expansion of the ecosystem, as some of you might be aware. In the Indian industries as well, across multiple, we are seeing some new types of platforms are emerging, and firms need to figure out how to be present in those ecosystems close to their customers so that they can interact in their moments. And then firms are also leveraging cloud to drive digital innovation. We are seeing firms set up innovation offices, which primarily use cloud as the key enabling platform for their innovation. As we went further and we asked questions as to how they are doing it, when it comes to digital customer experience, there are a few priorities that emerged and few and you can kind of classify them into two parts. One of them is when you look at just the organization's IT department priorities, which is essentially the CIO's organization. They plan to use cloud to better manage the capacity during peak, because it allows them to scale up and down with relative ease, and then they can provide much better end user experience than the old days when you had to wait for months or weeks to kind of get the VM provisioned or some sort of a server made available to you. So, that is becoming one. They are looking at improving the experience of the employees in their interactions with IT applications and software. That is a pretty big percentage right there. Then they are also looking at increasing the speed at which they can deliver the value to their enterprise, and things like automation and DevOps are becoming key for adoption of the cloud. On the other hand, when you look at what business applications, why is cloud important for the business applications? This is something that is coming from the business decision makers. They want to improve customer experience or engagement using cloud for their business application. Again, very similar to the technology provider, they want to be able to scale quickly and relatively easily, so that their business applications are not found wanting in the times of need. So, all in all, they are using cloud to drive their digital experience either directly through building the apps on that platform, or indirectly by making the infrastructure which is running that app in such a way that it does not impact its performance when it is used by their customers or employees. Similarly, when you look at digital operational excellence, again the priorities are divided across two. One is the IT department's priority on the left, and there the CIOs are looking at building better capabilities so that they can scale their IT deployments. They want to get better control of security and compliance, which is kind of interesting, because at some point in the past I talked about how security and compliance is becoming important. There was a time when security and compliance was the key blocker for cloud adoption, and companies and especially CIOs and some of the decision makers were worried whether the cloud is the right platform when it comes to security. But now we are seeing they actually want to use cloud to drive that because they understand the cloud can be a pretty secure environment to run their business applications on. Then third one is around improving IT operations and processes. So, there's a ton of focus on that as well. Coming to the right, when it comes to business applications or IT objectives for migrating public applications to the public cloud, there we are looking at how some of these characteristics are important, whether it comes to reducing the reliance on legacy infrastructure which is holding you back, ability to scale up and down, find a solution that was faster than fixing your own data center and setting up a DR site. So, all of these are kind of becoming important characteristics when it comes to improving the digital operation excellence. Third one, 65% of the respondents cite that expanding digital ecosystem is a very important IoT priority for them for next 2 years, and they believe cloud is an important enabler for that, because they believe it provides them much better connectivity with their partners. In fact, we are seeing various firms across industries, but more so in the financial services also, which is considered to be fairly regulated, and there is a significant concern about the privacy and the security. Even those firms are looking at adopting cloud to drive better interaction, better presence in their customers' ecosystem, whether through interaction with the aggregators that might be present, whether to work with the fintechs that could be there in the industry. So, whether it is a secure or highly regulated industry or not so, cloud is becoming kind of an important tool to drive the expansion of the ecosystem. And finally, when it comes to digital innovation, like I said in the past, firms are setting up innovation labs and they are kind of funding or making or enabling those innovation labs using the cloud. And when we ask the firms how important are the following priorities for your IT department over the next 12 months, 67% of the folks said that improving ability to deploy new digital offerings to end customers is very important. And IT folks said that introducing new hardware for employee to keep up with new technology is very, very important. And if you have to do this at speed and the innovation that the firm is expecting you to provide, you kind of have to adopt again cloud for that. Doesn't have to be public, but quite a few number of people believe that public cloud will help free a lot of IT time to focus on core differentiators rather than just focusing on commodity workload. So, in summary, be it customer experience, operational excellence, ecosystem expansion or innovation, all four facets of digital transformations are being transformed with the help of cloud. As a result, we can see the cloud investment in India is on a rise. More than 39% of the firms say that they are going to increase it by 10%, and that's spending on cloud, that is. 25% of them say they will increase by 5% to 10%. Given that IT budgets are rising and even though they make a small part of the overall revenue for a firm in India, the focus on cloud is certainly there for them to kind of increase that spending. More industries have also started their journey of public cloud adoption. We are seeing that whether it's BFSI like I mentioned earlier, or healthcare, manufacturing, retail, all of these industries, the 6 of them that we surveyed, almost a similar type of distribution of their adoption or implementation as well as the planned implementation over next 12 months. In some cases, some industries were slightly behind the curve, but they are catching up, like healthcare or for that matter retail and manufacturing. Other industries like BFSI, IT enabled services, they are at the forefront of adopting public cloud in India. They are using it to do all kinds of applications. It's just not focused on customer facing applications. So, like I said in the past, it's just not about building digital interaction channels over cloud. Firms are also looking at even the middleware as well as the core applications that are running their workloads, and they are trying to migrate them onto the cloud platform as well. So, if you look at the contact center applications or the applications that are running their mobile app or the e-commerce platform, that has been significantly moving to cloud for some time. But even core operations applications like ERP, like customer software application like CRM, etc., they are being moved to the cloud as well. So, as a result, we are seeing quite a few of these applications, even in some cases core record keeping applications like Salesforce automation, finance, HR, they are already being moved to the cloud as well. So, the move to the cloud is just not limited to some of the peripheral applications, but kind of spreading across the entire enterprise. And we believe this trend is going to continue. More and more applications are likely to move to the public cloud in the future. Today, if you look at almost 50 to 74% of the firms are looking at 30% of their applications to be on the cloud, but that number above 50% of applications is moving from just 30% to 37%, and we are seeing almost 14% of the firm in the 25th in the top quartile of their applications moving to the public cloud. So, there is an increasing trends as to how firms planning to move their applications to the cloud. It cuts across industries, it cuts across the nature of applications, it cuts across the type of applications as well. Now, it is not without challenge. The public cloud adoption, obviously, while it's all great and good, but there are still some concerns that remain, especially in some industries. We are seeing that complexity of legacy, complexity around regulatory concerns rather, is kind of holding the firms back, because lack of regulatory clarity in some cases is holding the firms back, and they are looking at whether to adopt cloud or not. In certain cases, even firms where it's not clear whether they should be required to keep the data locally, or is it okay for them to use public cloud which is hosted elsewhere. So, some of those concerns are kind of introducing some bit of uncertainties, but more importantly, as some of those regulatory concerns do get clarified, some of the hybrid cloud environments are complicating the environment, because firms are ending up with multiple type of cloud environment invading their enterprise, because they figure out what's the best home for their applications, and as a result they end up with a fairly complex hybrid cloud landscape. So, they need to manage it well, and that's kind of also challenging their cloud operation. But the biggest concerns are still with security and privacy, and that's kind of interesting. We saw in few slides before that firms want to leverage cloud for improving their security posture or improving their privacy profile. But at the same time, that still seems to be one of the biggest concern as well. What we found that the nature of conversation is changing though. Earlier it was like a complete no, that we would not adopt public cloud because it's not secure or compliant, or doesn't address their privacy concerns about the data that's storing. But now the question that the firms are asking is changing. They're looking at how can they leverage cloud to improve some of these areas, improve their performance in some of these areas. So the question is changing, and firms are increasingly looking at cloud as to, instead of just saying a complete no, they are looking at how can they improve their security, compliance and privacy profile using cloud. So that's a clear change or break from the past. But coming back to the application, which is the focus today, the complexity of legacy application is slowing the cloud migration, because firms have fairly complex landscape, and some of the applications may not lend themselves very well when it comes to migrate to cloud. So there are different approaches firms take when it comes to how they can move those applications or build or migrate those applications to the cloud, and we're going to talk about some of that in this section here. First of all, we would advise you to take a cloud first approach to accelerate your digital transformation and app modernization. You have to figure out what are the business scenarios which justify cloud investments. You'll have to leverage some of the cloud native technologies which drive differentiation for your business. For example, most of the public cloud providers such as Google and Amazon and Microsoft, they provide a fairly good analytics, big data and IoT capabilities on their platform. In addition to that, there are a lot of new and innovative services that they keep building, and firms are increasingly looking at leveraging some of these technologies. You may want to focus on automation, because that certainly helps you scale up the speed of the value delivery. And while you're doing it, you realize that you may still end up with a fairly complex hybrid cloud landscape. So you'll have to figure out how to manage that. There are essentially three primary journeys when it comes to applications to the cloud. Firms either look at optimizing the infrastructure, and they figure out which applications can be run on-prem, which can be on hosted private cloud platform, or maybe on public cloud platform. So that's one approach. Second one, firms are looking at migrating some of the existing applications, and they're looking at where to find the cloud services and tools for the unique app that they have. And then third one, firms could be looking at building new cloud native applications as well on the cloud. But as you do that, you have to figure out how do you differentiate some of the core requirements that your business has from the contextual requirements. If you look at this particular graphic, there are two axes to it. First one, you have to figure out what value customers are getting from that particular application. So that's on the y-axis. On x-axis, how does it differentiate the experience? So if your differentiation is high and there's a significant value that the customers are getting, and then that's what is core for your business. Core in the traditional definition would have been an enterprise application, or the one which is kind of a record keeping application, but that core has changed now. You should consider only the applications which help you build experiences and services that are unique and provide a great experience. Those are the new core applications. For others, you can, depending on how your customers value it, you can either look at some of the adopting some of the commercial platform and increase the delivery, the value delivery using that, or you can simply buy completely off the shelf. So there's a range of options that you have there, but it's important for you to know what is core and what is not. Some of the key technologies that are driving differentiation or capabilities across this entire stack, whether it's your core services, whether it's in your industry specific domain services, or whether it's your touchpoint experience touchpoints. Most of these new technologies which are driving exponential improvements in these areas are run on cloud, be it containers, be it opinionated frameworks like Cloud Foundry, OpenShift and Anthos, be it your serverless like Knative or Lambda, be it your microservices platform or event management tools. All of these core technologies are being built on the cloud. So you kind of have to figure out how do you leverage or use some of these new capabilities that are being built to drive your application modernization. Firms usually look at migrating workloads to cloud platforms before modernizing them. We see an increasing number of firms first move and then improve it. And that kind of makes sense, because you don't want to modernize an application which doesn't drive significant value to your business. For example, unless your legacy application is holding you back from scaling up your customer facing touch point or improving the experience that you want to deliver to your customers, you probably do not want to modernize it just for the sake of it. You're better off probably migrating it to the cloud first and then looking at modernizing it. When it comes to application modernization, 1 in 4 organizations in India say that using cloud native technology is a key objective and it's part of their cloud strategy. There are certain unique considerations that that they have to keep in mind when they're looking at application modernization. Like I said, first of all, modernization won't make sense for every app. You have to figure out what needs to be more modernized and what need to be simply migrated first, and maybe modernize later when it becomes kind of a bottleneck in your efforts towards improving your customer experience. Then if you are doing an app by app migration approach, which most of the firms do, then you might have to build a very solid business case that can highlight why you should migrate or modernize a certain application or a subset of application. And the more you wait, the cost of modernization goes up. But the business case, building the business case for application modernization is key. And that's where I want to share this framework with you, and we call it total economic impact. Firms usually take care of a couple of parameters when it comes to the business case. They keep account of the benefits that they're going to get as part of that particular initiative, and they take care of the costs that they're likely to incur. Benefits are usually in the form of additional revenues or lower costs that you might be required to incur as part of generating that revenue, or higher customer satisfaction that you might drive, and you might reduce a little bit of technology risk and cost as well. So those are the factors that firms keep in mind. Also factor in the costs that they might incur in running that initiative, be it the platform cost of adopting that platform, or the labor cost of either building that platform, or the cost of not freeing up the labor to do certain higher order activities, the savings that you might get as a result of that. So some of that is factored in usually in the business case, and then they come up with some sort of a hurdle rate, whether it's IRR or something that they're trying to meet or clear. But more often than not, firms forget that there's a huge amount of flexibility that the firms generate by leveraging cloud, and it comes by the ability to leverage APIs and platforms that cloud provides. It comes to the lower cost of experimentation and personalization, because as you adopt cloud, you can drive a significant amount of automation through which you can reduce the cost of experimentation and innovation as well. And this increased velocity also allows for faster risk reduction and opportunity identification for your business. So some of these factors need to be kept in mind when you're looking at building your business case. So not just benefit and cost, but the kind of flexibility that your business is going to gain as a result of that. Third thing, or the fourth thing, is around the risk. As a result of adopting some of these modernization capabilities, what are the risks of transformation that you're reducing or you're undertaking? So some of these risks are likely to increase the rate of return that you are going to get otherwise, or lower the risk of rate of return. So you have to factor in the cost of, or the risk of transformation. What if your transformation doesn't work out as well you thought it will? Or at the same time, what are the technology risks that you could be eliminating by modernizing some of these applications or going to the cloud? So keep that in mind, as well as what kind of skill and cultural gaps you're likely to introduce. So your business case framework has to be much more exhaustive and complete when you look at app modernization, or for that matter any business case that you're trying to build. But in the context of app modernization, you can look at some of these newer flexibilities and some of the newer technology risk elimination characteristics that you may need to factor in for completing your business case. So in summary, I'm going to just leave you with 3 points. One is you have to make cloud key to your app modernization plans. You have to focus on what's core for you to drive differentiation, and separate it from the contextual requirements, and then you have to make a holistic business case for app modernization, not just limited to benefit and risk. So with that in mind, with that note, I would like to thank you for your time, and it was great speaking to you today. and in case you want to reach out to me, here are my contact details. Thanks a lot.